Hello, wonderful family. Another glorious day and another beautiful opportunity to share the word with you. Hallelujah. Join me. I discovered something again whilst studying. If you join me to the book of Matthew, chapter 14, and beginning to read from verse 22, I read from the King James. Okay, let me give you a background. This is the story of when Jesus. No, let me not give you a preview. Let's just jump in. You would understand as we're going on. Verse 22. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, notice it was Jesus who did this sending away. He wasn't doing the big man thing. He was taking tasks and handling them himself too, even though he was the leader of the group. It says, and when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. So they couldn't come back for him. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. So there was a storm, so to speak. The waves were turbulent. And it was in the middle of that turbulence that Jesus chose to walk on the water. Notice he didn't even bother stopping the turbulence. He didn't bother with the wind being contrary. He didn't speak to it. He just went for the solution. Where did he want to get across? So he didn't even say stop for the ship to come to me. He just walked across. That tells me that there are certain situations that you shouldn't even waste your time addressing the contrary circumstances. Just go ahead. Address what you want to get done and get it done. Not even wasting time with those contrary circumstances. Now, it says, and in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. This is something that had never been done before. They had never heard of before, and neither had anybody seen it before. For a human being to walk on water, contrary to the laws of physics, contrary to logic, it defied logic. So, of course, they were scared. This was like an apparition, a ghost, something that was, this couldn't be something that was denser than water, to be able to walk on top of water, particularly when in the middle of a storm, waves. Now, verse 26, and when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. Basically, they said, this is a ghost, and they were scared. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. So when they were scared, Jesus told them to be of good cheer. Don't be afraid. Whenever there are circumstances or situations that want to cause fear, the Lord will always want to comfort you. Be of good cheer. Don't be afraid. Now, and Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, come. I want to pause here for us to dissect this a little bit. A lot of us say, or a lot of folk that I've heard say, he didn't give Jesus a chance. And Jesus just said he should come. Jesus couldn't tell him, don't come. If he told him, don't come, then it would have meant that he was negating that it was him. Because Peter said, if it be thou, bid me come. So, of course, it was Jesus. So Jesus had no option but to say, okay, come. When Peter wasn't ready for water walking faith. I beg to disagree. In this circumstance, join me here. Jesus, if this wasn't God's will for Peter, Jesus had every right to say, it is me, but it's not God's will for you to come. Stay put in the boat. Jesus had every right to do that if it wasn't God's will for Peter to walk on the water. Jesus didn't even think about it. Peter did not think about it. He just made a request. And I believe that this was in keeping with Matthew chapter 7 verse 7. Ask, and you shall receive. He asked, and it was granted to him. So this goes now to tell us that as long as we could ask in faith, it will be given to us. God said so. Now, why did I say we ask in faith? Because what happened sequel, Jesus had to admonish him. Just join me. It says, and he said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Remember that it was still boisterous. It was still very windy. In fact, let us read that from the Amplified from verse 29. It says, he said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water, and he came toward Jesus. So he walked a good distance toward Jesus. Now, verse 30, but when he perceived and felt the strong wind, he was frightened. So when he started walking, the strong wind was still there. The only thing is that he did not bother to pay attention to his perceptions and his feelings. He was walking based on the instruction he got, come. He put confidence in that instruction. Okay, this is the master. If it is the master and he told me to come, then I definitely would walk on the water. So, but when he started paying attention to the wind and the waves, he started sinking. Did he starting to sink mean now that it wasn't the master? No, it was always the master, because the proviso there, or the query there was, if it is the master, he tells me to come, and I will come. And the truth was that it was the master. And he said, come. So there should have been no reason for him to sink, since the truth, the query returned a response of truth. So Jesus goes on to tell us what happened. Say, yes, in the presence of truth, something else matters. Belief in the truth. Not paying attention to things clamoring for your attention, negative situations. Because in this circumstance, he says, when he perceived and felt the strong wind, he was frightened. That strong wind was always there. The only thing is that he did not give in to perception up until then. He was only paying attention to the word he was told, come. And that come meant that it was the master. So embedded inside that come, in fact, Peter believed that the master could make him walk on the water. That's why he said, if it is you, truly, truly you, master, tell me to come. So he had confidence that if the master told him, the master was good. Well, if that really was the master, he'll be able to walk on the water. So he had confidence initially, but he started paying attention to stuff happening around him, which was always there. So it means that if he paid attention to that stuff in the first place, he wouldn't even have walked on that water. So if he actually paid attention, like I said, from the get-go, to the stuff that was happening, negative stuff that was happening, he would never have walked. So initially he had confidence. Now listen to what the master said. As he began to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me from death. Verse 31, instantly Jesus reached out his hand and caught and held him, saying to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? Why did you doubt? Or why did you prevaricate? Or why did you have double mind? Or why did you start hesitating in your belief system? First of all, you believed completely. You didn't mix what you believed with what you were seeing. You set aside everything that you were seeing. You put it at bay or kept it at bay. But suddenly you decided to insert external information, walk by sight and not by faith, mixed what you were seeing with the truth I gave you, and it corrupted the truth. And then fear came and you started sinking. So the main place, that one of the main places I wanted us to really hit on the head, was the fact that Jesus didn't say it is not the will of God for you to walk on the water. As long as Peter asked for it and Peter could believe for it, it was granted to Peter. And Peter walked. Now, Peter started sinking only because he doubted. What is it that you ask God for? If you can believe for it, He will give it to you. He says all things are possible to him that believeth. Peter demonstrated it there. Something that had never happened before happened because he believed initially. But along the line, he let external circumstances corrupt his believing. That's when disaster started striking. And notice he did not just sink, he started sinking. Have you heard that kind of a phrase before? That you start sinking, just like a boat that springs a leak. It's a slow process. But with a human being or anything that has mass like that, density, it doesn't start sinking. It sinks. But in this case, as faith was leaving and fear was entering, that's the same way he was going down gradually. But that's besides the point. The main point is that Jesus could have told him, this is not the will of God for you. You're not ready for this. But Jesus didn't tell him that, meaning that he could have done it. He could have done it. So don't look at it that I'm not ready for this. No. If you can believe for it, if you hear the word of the master, the secret there that the master said was, or showed in the scriptures, do not pay attention to perceptions around. Walk by faith and not by your five senses, not by what is happening around. Just only key into what I have said. Incline thine ear and thine eye to what I've said. That's all. I'm well able to put you across, put you over. God bless you. Hallelujah.